with the mission to keep as many men on as many guns for as long as possible. We called him Doc. Welcome to Combat Vet Vision. And now your host, Aaron Chief Seabird.
Hey, how's everybody doing? Welcome to Combat Vet Vision. Hey, this is a show that I get to basically highlight a lot of the things that happen to me in my life, a lot of the things that happen to our combat vets and what they're experiencing, the pathways that we might choose, and how we're dealing with life in the transition from our military career into civilian life and different things of that nature, as well as dealing with injuries, seen or unseen, and how that might look. Um, a lot of great opportunities, a lot of great things, a lot of hard, rough things in between. But hey, I got Colonel Mack on deck today. United States Marine Corps, United States Army, Lieutenant Colonel retired, uh, 32 years of service, 9 different books under his belt. He's going to talk about some really cool things, therapeutic effect of writing, journaling, all kinds of other things, and just capturing all the moments that kind of impacted the military combat scenario of things, and the feelings of how that felt to leave the United States thinking that might be the last time you ever get to touch foot in it, and then coming back and actually being able to write some books, the struggles of life that he experienced. And so it's going to be really cool to hear his story. So, hey, Colonel Mack, thanks a lot for being on the show. This is SitchRadio.com's production of Combat Vet Vision. Welcome, sir.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, yes, sir. So, hey, you just have been writing books. It's something that you find very passionate, but it's a lot of different things that you've kind of accomplished in your life, from the struggles of reading when you graduated high school to barely being able to read the bare minimum, to joining the Marine Corps, getting through some stuff, and then reading to your daughter, and really getting more honed in. And now you're writing books, 9 of them, top seller, Amazon top sellers, a whole bunch of stuff. So, and talk about that, because not all of these books have a lot to do, right? They have from how someone can get started writing, to journaling, to all the different processes, to great stories of how you felt about different things in the Marine Corps and the Army. So,
Yes, sir. Well, thank you again for the opportunity. And I've been blessed. So that number one Amazon thing, I don't know where that came from, but I got lucky. So long story short, okay, I'm a 32-year military veteran. I'm retired from active duty. I was a Sea Cadet. Actually, just finished writing an autobiography, and I tell all this story. I started out as a Sea Cadet about age 14, 15. That's when I started my life in uniform. Long story short, that experience, that military experience, changed my life, because I was a fledgling kid, bad grades, getting in trouble. I was destined for either jail or unemployment, like welfare. But the military changed my life, starting with the Sea Cadets. Okay. Long story short, I went to Valley Forge Military Academy, where I was exposed to the Marine Corps guys, and I said, I got to have that. Enlisted in the Marine Corps Reserve while I was in college. Did a couple years enlisted time. I thank lucky stars I did that, because I knew I was going to be an officer. I knew I wanted to be a leader. I knew to become a leader, you had to get a college degree, of which I did. I wasn't really prepared to do that. So I had to get my act together, improve my reading skills, and apply my grades. So Valley Forge Military Academy helped me a lot with that. Taught me how to be a good student. I got into a good 4-year school, Temple University, Villanova University. I was able to get a bachelor's degree, commissioned officer of Marines. Did my active duty time, got married, had a kid. Life was good. Long story short, through the Desert Storm thing, I was in the reserve, the Marine Corps. They stood down so fast. I got 1 day active duty. And then before I knew it, I was discharged. President Clinton was reduction in force, the military, they were cutting back. I was cut back. So I had a couple years break of service, and the National Guard recruited me. And they said, wow, you were a captain in the Marine Corps Reserve, you were an Amtracker and operations guy. And I said, well, yeah, what about that Special Forces? My roommate in college, he was SF, and it seemed interested in me. I've been to airborne school. They said, we'll get you SF. We'll send you train. Okay, so long story short, 2-year process of doing paperwork, getting in the National Guard. Right there, that was a red flag. I mean, how long does it take to get a guy processed in that has a clean record, clean background, hadn't been a criminal, whatever. So I showed, they said, all right, your stuff's done, you're approved, come on in, to swear me in. And they said, okay, Sergeant McBrearty. I said, wait a minute, I'm a captain. Well, if you want to go special forces, you start as a sergeant. It's a different thing for you. I said, wait a minute, time out. That wasn't the plan. So I said, look, give me whatever the heck you got. So I ended up in the infantry. The rest is history. And literally, the rest is history. And these books are a testament. So that's kind of how I got to where I am. And I started as an enlisted guy, worked my way up. And by the grace of God, I got out as a lieutenant colonel. And I thank my lucky stars every day.
Well, that's good stuff. I mean, that's a lot of package in a small sentence, a small amount of words. But that's great. It's a great story. And then what was it that got you involved with the books? I mean, obviously, therapeutic effect is a huge part of it, and you're part of a writing club too. And you talk about these groups. You just attended the PTSD group that I have on Tuesday nights. That was great to see you in there. You're involved in a lot of things. You want to help out veterans. You want to continue helping out yourself and moving yourself down a path that's really good and passionate. So talk about that passion. Talk about what that looks like for you as a therapeutic effect for writing, and what that might look like for somebody else that might need to get involved in that.
Well, it's a good question. I mean, it's a complicated question. Long story. Sorry, I'm going to say long story short. One thing about communicators, writers, we like to tell stories. I've been a storyteller my whole life. I consider myself kind of a closet writer my whole life. I always was writing stuff here and there for the base paper or whatever. But I was always, military active guy, and managing people and assets and training. So I never had opportunity to commercially do anything with writing. So when I got deployed to Iraq, I was full-time Army officer, and I was going to graduate school at night, and my curriculum was American history. And so I was in the middle of reading, writing, research at a graduate level education when I got deployed. So I was already in the academic mode. And I took what I learned in my studies, and it inspired me to document our deployment. So that's what I did. I set out to keep a journal, and I'll refer to these are my books currently. Combat Journal 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's 5 and 6. Six is going to come out on Veterans Day 2024. I released my books on per the days. The first book I put out, that one came out on Veterans Day 2022. The Combat Journal started 2023 Veterans Day, and then henceforth. This comes out in November this year. So I kept the journal when I was deployed for 2 reasons: historical documentation, because I was a pseudo historian, scholar, whatever. And secondly, I wanted to prolong our legacy for the soldiers I deployed with. I deployed with 1,000 soldiers from the California Army National Guard. I was the number 2 in command, and I wanted their legacy to live on and what we did. I lost 5 soldiers in that deployment, and I write these books in their honor. So when I retired 2016, I'm lieutenant colonel, and I had fall subject to many of the ailments from the PACT Act. If you just look up PACT Act and what those medical conditions are, I have about 1/3 of them, unfortunately, and it's all from being downrange. So I really wasn't in a position where I could go out and work in the corporate world. So I gravitated to some Veterans Affairs support groups. Unbeknownst to me, I just gravitated there. Nobody said, hey, do this, do that. Are you PTSD? Come here, we'll help you. I just did it on my own. They had a program called Guitar for Vets. I heard about it. I got on a waiting list. It was 1-year waiting list for Guitar for Vets, but that kind of changed everything for me. It was my first support group. I got in there, did the 10 lessons, and they give you a guitar and a little graduation. And then there's a thing called Strings out of the Loma Linda VA, where they continue the guitar playing in the groups. And it's really therapeutic. This guy's in there with support dogs and all that. We all are there helping each other, all vets. None of us are great guitar players or singers, but we have a good time together and we support each other. We play concerts at, veterans homes occasionally, hospitals, VA hospitals, stuff. So that experience, one of the mentors is Ted Peterson, who worked for the VA counselor. He's a wonderful guy. He mentioned he'd written a poetry book. And I'm like, this guy was a cop. He's a military guy, VA, writing poetry. I was like, what? And he said, yeah. And he introduced me to a guy named Andreas Kosak. Andreas Kosak founded Written by Veterans, which is an organization sponsored through Cal State San Bernardino's Veteran Success Center. Long story short, my contact with him, he was able to assist me getting my first book published, which is my master's thesis on American history. And that book's pretty cool. It's American history broken down. I got a really cool essay thesis in there about the history of the National Guard. I wove my personal story in it. My dad was in World War II, Army Air Corps B-17s. I put his story in it. And I ended up with our War on Terror in my unit in Iraq. So that was my first at bat. He helped me get there, teaching me the craft of editing and books and photographs and formatting. And that kind of took off from there. I mean, I had this journal sitting in my computer for 18 years. I'd written 1,200, well, it was actually about 2,000 pages. So after I knocked out 2 other books. This is Combat Essays. It tells you all about what my unit did in Iraq. It's about 15, 16 essays about a lot of civil military operations. We were building hospitals, building schools, improving the human condition for the Iraqis. Stories that people never hear about. So I'm very proud of that book there. It's a little book. Then I did a golf book because I'm a golf enthusiast, and there's a whole thing about me building a golf course in Iraq. Just Google it. It's an interesting story. So I cranked these out. I learned the craft here. Along working with the veteran support groups, I joined another writing group through the VA at Loma Linda. It's a writing group. So I was in like 3 support groups. I started learning from these guys, teaching them how to get right. There were some older guys who wanted to learn how to write. And I developed some exercises for them to learn how to write. And I've literally written an entire book, 2 books on how to write and then how to get published. They're called How to Get Published on Amazon. That comes out in May, June, 2024. And what we talked about, Aaron, is for veterans to want to get it anywhere near writing, start writing, that first book, has exercises. This takes you from ground zero to start writing. Therapeutic is an understatement, okay? Reliving the whole combat deployment and all that, and what my family went through there when we were leaving, and I'm on the tarmac, and it's all that stuff you see in the movies. Over here, I was in command of the battalion, and I had 2 soldiers killed on my watch. I spilled my guts on that one, and that still haunts me till this day. And then coming home, as it's implied, when we came home. These 2 are leadership books, okay? I came up with these ideas because we had such a leadership challenge commanding officer. That's about as polite as I could say, right? Without going over the line. He was leadership challenged. These books are all about his mistakes because he made every mistake in the book. And it's lessons learned for future generations. That became, I had some colleges, universities wanted me to talk about leadership in my books. So I came up with like a syllabus, and that's what that turned out to be. It's got an interactive question, answer, and even an answer key in the back of the book. So that's kind of my little writing story. Therapeutic. I mean, there's nothing like it. I'm putting my thoughts down on paper. You don't have to share it with anybody, but it's a way to open up and deal with your problems and face your problems. So for me, it really works. And in the other support groups, I know it's very, very, very beneficial. These 2 are, if you can see them, these are anthologies. This top one's from the Thursday group, and they are a bunch of old dudes, most of them from Vietnam, some from Korea War, and none of them have any writing experience. We did a book together. Each one of us has a chapter. There's like about 15, 20 guys in there. Guys never wrote anything. Some guys just wrote a little daily a journal entry. Some wrote a little poem. I mean, but they're not writers, but they're in a book. This anthology is written by veterans, guys with a little more experience, but it's about 20 of us. We all have a chapter in there. And these are two examples of veterans working together and mentoring each other and helping each other. And we actually produced 2 books, with pretty amazing anthologies.
Yeah, that's an amazing thing. When I came back after being blown up, I was asked to be a guest speaker for the corpsman birthday, and they wanted to know my story. 3 generals were in attendance that time, and as I began writing my story, I remember having to relive the moments, and they were it was very difficult, but at the same time, it was very therapeutic to go through and process the thoughts. And as you talked a little bit about being in tears and being just lost in your thoughts after 18 years of just having this book in your computer system, and then you have to go over it, and you're obviously refining some of these things, or how you want to present it. It just becomes a very amazing thing. And I want to say, I'm not a writer, but but I pretend to be one every once in a while in real life. That's, whatever I'm doing, that's what I say about everything that I do. I'm not a therapist. I just pretend to be one every once in a while, but I'm not. I'm multiple different things. Just getting involved in yourself and finding a pathway that's really gonna hone in your mindset to give you some direction. Just the passion and being able to help somebody else out. Collaborating with fellow veterans is a huge thing. You also talked about the guy who develops your covers for these books. If you want to go into that a little bit, I mean, you got some great stuff. Talk about some stuff. You've in your process of doing this book, a lot of therapies being done, therapeutic effect, because we're not therapists. We just play like we are in real life sometimes. But the therapeutic effect on these things are amazing. And the veterans that are along with you on this ride, obviously, all these stories, the other book that has 18 different, guys that served in your unit stories. It's incredible. Talk about the guy who does the cover for you, Vietnam vet.
Okay, Michael, if I get his name right, Shipley. He's a career photographer, Vietnam cavalry vet, combat action vet. Okay, he's been down range, seen it all, done it all, photographed some very prominent people. I mean, so long story, through my networking with the veteran support groups, I was able to get in touch with this gentleman. He's an elderly man now and retired, but he still is a professional photographer and illustrator guy. I mean, and I asked him, could you help me with a couple of book covers? I said, I finished 2 books. They're how to get published on Amazon. Two books, volume 1 and 2. When I think about that, the thing about writing, the more you do it, the better you get at it. So for me to sit down and write a review, do a book, I mean, it just comes easy to me. I don't know. I think from writing for two years, I wrote, that journal was 2 years in the making. So, I mean, I've been doing this a long time, but now for the last 3 years, all I've done is writing, researching, support groups with the writing. And if I'm not creating content, I'm reading about how to create content and publish. So I'm not an expert, but, I know enough to get books done, and follow through to completion. So I approached him to do book covers for this, and I had some concepts. And he and I have met a few times to planning meetings. Long story short, I told him about the podcast, but I saw him on Friday or Saturday, and he came up with this concept overnight for me for this podcast. I didn't have this thing. I'm not that, I might have had a couple of my books out or something, but I'm not that, savvy on creativity of the art. He created this thing. He's a whiz, it's just, what do you call them? JPEGs, and created it, put the letters, and he's an amazing guy. Vietnam vet. Okay. And he said to me, we met yesterday. I picked this up. He says, I don't talk to people. He says, but I talk to you. He says, you're a veteran and you've been downrange. He says, I like you. I can talk to you. And man, he does. I mean, this is what I like about these writing to support groups and veterans in general. People do like this stuff for other vets. He's not asking for anything. Andreas Kosak, who's helped me get all these books in the can, never asked for anything. He volunteers his time. He's an amazing guy. So we're doing the how-to books. And then this is concept for my military life is autobiography. He's going to do that book cover. This is just me as a kid. And then my retired military life will come later, okay? And then I've got children's book series I've come up with, and that one's already finished. And then this one's coming out here soon, okay? So I just came up with this because I'm doing all these books, and I said to myself, eventually my military stories, maybe I'll run out of stories. Well, I got these two little cute dogs that they're kind of like my pseudo support dogs. They're always with me. I take care of them. I'm retired. They're two little cute Shih Tzus. So I just started writing stories about them. They write themselves, So I have a whole series of children's books in development that one's already in the can that they'll be coming out soon.
That's great stuff. Hey, we're gonna take a quick break and we'll come back with your final thoughts and some other things, how to get a hold of you, different things of that nature. But we'll take a quick break for the PSA from the VA.
This message is from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. Did you serve in the military? If so, you can obtain a free lifetime pass to more than 2,000 federal recreation sites. These sites are located across more than 400 million acres of public lands, including national parks, wildlife refuges, and forests. The lands host activities to fit any lifestyle: hiking, biking, fishing, camping, and much more. Gold Star families are also eligible for these free lifetime passes. Plus, they cover entrance fees for a driver and all passengers in a car, or up to 3 additional adults at sites that charge per person. Obtaining one is easy. Just go to the National Park Service website, nps.gov, or the National Park Service app.
I think you're muted, brother. I think you're Aaron.
Hey, sorry about that. Hey, we're back with Colonel Mack. Hey, thanks a lot. This is his show to really kind of talk about some really cool things, and we just I had it on mute. Sorry, that usually doesn't happen to me. I'm usually better at that, but apologize. But Colonel Mack, hey, we got about 15 minutes left, or however long we want to take in that time. But feel free to put out any other information that you might want. If you want to get a hold of him, it's johnwritershistory.com,
johnwriteshistory.com. Or you just put my name in on Amazon. You put in Combat Journal, Amazon, anything on John McBrearty on Amazon, and you'll find I'm all over the place in there.
Feel free to talk about all kinds of other things.
I have a couple samples of my writing if you want to hear them.
You had some really good things you wanted to kind of talk about with that.
Well, what I'll do is for this Combat Journal series I've mentioned several times, I'll just read you the introduction. Combat Journal is a fictional version of the real post 9/11 story. It contains real emotions, real tragedy, love, despair, hope, faith, and even death. You're about to go on a journey like you've never been before. You'll observe our main character and narrator, Major Darby Hillcrest, mobilize, train, and certify his armored battalion of citizen soldiers for combat duty in Operation Iraqi Freedom. You'll witness how this officer deals with the stress and pressures that most of us only see in Hollywood movies. The extraordinary demands placed on this officer are unfathomable. This book will forever change the way you look at our nation's military. Hold on and enjoy the ride in this combat journal. That opens it up. And then, all right. I like the one when I'm walking. Oh yeah, here we go. Okay, so here's a paragraph out of part 1 of the combat journal. And this is, part 1 consists of mobilization call up, training at Fort Lewis, Yakima, NTC Fort Irwin, and then shipping out to Kuwait, where we were staging our equipment and then moving into over the Burma to Iraq. We move into Iraq on that book, part 2, and we had that one, unfortunately, with our first KIA, killed in action. And then that's my nightmare. That's when I was in command and had a couple of fatalities. And then that's us going home. So here is a segment from part 1, Operation Iraqi Freedom, Kuwait. 17 March 04, it's St. Paddy's Day, but there's no green beer for us, as this is departure day. Departing the USA for the Middle East, and who knows what else is in store for us. Walking to the DC-10, I could not help but take in the picturesque view of the San Bernardino Mountains and experience the beauty of the warm California desert. A beauty you cannot describe, particularly when you know you won't see it for quite some time, if ever again. It looks so beautiful. As I approached the stairs, I crossed my heart several times, praying to the Lord. When I got to the plane, I opened the booklet I received yesterday from the priest and read the Apostles' Creed and several prayers. When we started taxiing, I grabbed my rosary and crossed my heart multiple times. I prayed for a soldier's safe return, my safe return, and for my family. Note from author. What I do in my books, this is the journal from 2003 to 2005. And I put in italics, note from author, and that's my 2023, 2024 commentary on my perspective on things now as an old retired dude. So note from author. Truth be told, I had an omen about not ever coming back from war in one piece or coming back at all. We're currently flying over Iraq. Some 20 minutes ago, we flew over Baghdad. As we flew south, there are no lights anywhere, just darkness. There's a sporadic low cloud cover giving an ominous flavor. Now the plane's descending. We all know what that means. Harm's way. We're here, and there's no turning back now. My heart's pounding out of my chest. I can only think of little Junior, my son, and how I wish to see him again. He needs his dad. Godspeed. That's a taste of what I do.
That's great stuff. It sounds really easy to read and smooth, and it also sounds like it's a very interesting story. And obviously these stories are, because I remember, sitting on the tarmac, but for you had mentioned that you would just sit on that DC-10, opened up your computer and just started typing immediately. So those thoughts were fresh in your mind, and it's hard to go back. We talked about that because our thoughts are kind of blurred or, maybe skewed because we didn't necessarily, document them. And
yeah, some of my notes through this thing is, I even say, I say, note from author, thank God I wrote this crap down. I can't remember anything. I can't remember all this stuff.
Yeah, that's probably so true. And you're just like, whoa, there's so many things.
I have to preface that I wrote this as historical fiction. I consider it a fictional story for several reasons. One, I wanted to protect the identities of the soldiers and individuals within our unit, and even the unit. So I changed unit, I changed names of, and there's no people, and anybody that, if there's any similarities, is strictly coincidental.
Good stuff, sir. Is there anything else you'd like to say? I mean, it's amazing. I definitely want to get you back on here. You're probably going to write another 4 books or so before we get you back on. But
I've got 5 finished. I'm just I'm waiting to get reviewed by my mentor. He does a final quality check before I put it up on Amazon. But we have the Los Angeles Festival of Books next weekend, and life gets in the way. So we'll get they're already done, but so I'm driving on. But yeah, I would say if there are veterans out there that want to reach out and learn a little bit about what I'm doing, or if I can help them in any way, they can contact me through my website. There's a link there that they can email there and all that. So it's johnwriteshistory.com or John McBrearty at Amazon. All my books are there. And also I wanted to share with you before we stop. One thing that's really cool is come out is audiobooks. So here's one of my books on audio.
Production.
Can you let me
From
know if you
writing
can
and
you hear
editing
it?
the 4-part book series, Combat Journal, I mention many leadership lessons learned throughout our deployment. There have been many publications devoted to the singular subject of leadership. In fact, the U.S. Army has a whole literary division whose sole purpose is to create and update Army publications.
Talking about these books.
Many officers and NCOs with much smarter minds than mine work on those manuscripts, and I in no way wish to be compared to their work. However, what I will provide for you is real-world experiences pertaining to the subject at hand, leadership. FM, Field Manual 6-22, is the primary source for Army doctrinal leadership theories presented in this book. Any tables, charts, illustrations,
Anyway, that's just an example I wanted to share with you. Not everybody likes buying books, reading books, whatever. You can listen to the book, and it's very inexpensive. And the e-books on Amazon are as little as like $2, $3, $4. I mean, they're not too expensive. So they make it real user friendly. And that audiobook is just a wonderful thing.
Awesome.
You're driving down the freeway, you're listening to Colonel Mack's books. Life is good.
That's good stuff. Hey, and if you want to get a hold of Colonel Mack through me, you can always go through me, and I'll filter it through to him and make sure your message gets out. So, Colonel Mack, thanks a lot for being on the show. If there's anything else you got to say,
no,
feel free to do
I
so.
really appreciate everything you do. I want to thank every veteran's family member for their support, and anybody that supports our vets. And we'll stick together. We're going to get through this.
Thanks, Colonel Mack. Appreciate you.
Yeah, God bless.
Next time. Hey, this show is really brought to you by SitchRadio.com. It's put together through a whole bunch of efforts through Brian Colburn, who's sitting there making the buttons work and doing all the magic behind the scenes. But SitchRadio.com produces and puts out my podcast. I'm lucky enough to be on here and doing this thing, but I do most of my stuff through the Warrior Bill Foundation, PTSD Foundation. There's a lot of nonprofits that are doing some incredible things. Please utilize those resources and pick a path that's going to be good for you always. Till next time, strength and honor. Out.